Ladies and gentlemen, now stepping on to Radio Row, Super Bowl champion, league MVP, the great Joe Theismann. Joe, how are you?
Great, Charlie. It's good to catch up with you. Been a crazy year for us doing it like this instead of sitting down face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't mind being in Tampa Bay right now, but we got a big one coming up. What are you thinking about this weekend, Joe?
I think it's going to be exciting. I mean, there's so many storylines. You've got so many great athletes in this game. You've got a terrific wide receiving core for Tampa Bay. You've got a terrific wide receiving core when it comes to Kansas City. The offensive line is the question mark in Kansas City. Both tackles are not going to be available. But you know what? Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Sean McVay, to me, are three of the most creative play callers we have in the league. And so we saw what Andy did on fourth down against Cleveland last week. You know, he made that kind of a call to get the first down.
Gutsy.
Yeah, it was. And it's what he is. I mean, he's got ice water in his veins. Of course, I think now Tom and Bruce and Byron are all on the same page offensively when it comes to Tampa Bay. So, and then, it's Tom and obviously Patrick, and then you've got Steve Spagnuolo, who has had probably more success against Tom than anybody in big games.
Yeah.
So, and I really think that's the X factor. I really think that Steve Spagnuolo versus the offense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the X factor in this game. If I was going to pick one thing, that would be it.
I think so. I don't think that makes Brady happy to see him on that other sideline over there. And
I wouldn't be thrilled. That's what I felt about sometimes when, certain coaches against the Cowboys used to line up over there.
Right. Because when you see these DCs, how much of an impact do they have? So to all the listeners, when you look at the coaching staffs, right, preparing for a team, how much does that impact your mentality as a quarterback, compared to the actual talent on the field?
Well, I think the talent is one thing because it's very recognizable. The concepts are what you concern yourself with from a DC standpoint. What has he done to me before? Right. What are the looks that he's going to give me? Now, that sort of puts the advantage in the DC's hands because you saw this before. It's like a sleight of hands with cards. Right. Okay, here's the deck that you were dealt last time we played. That's not going to be the same deck you're going to see. Normally, like if you play a team twice in 3 weeks, like we do in the league, neither team can change very much. Offensively, you sprinkle in a few things. Defensively, maybe you put some more pressures, but that's about it. But when it comes to a game like this, it's Tom's going to have to be on his P's and Q's, and Tom's not going to run away from anybody. Patrick can create with his legs. Tom, he creates with his arm.
Absolutely. And you're a man that created incredible moments and incredible memories for us with your arm. I wanted to take it back to you're leaving Notre Dame. When you went to the CFL, what's going through your head now as a young man, and where was the NFL on your radar?
I wanted to be a part of the NFL, but the economics just didn't work. I mean, you'll love this. I mention these numbers and people look at me like, wow, was that like you played in a dinosaur age, right? It was like before the turn of the century kind of stuff. But my contract offer from the Miami Dolphins was $35, $45, and $55,000, 3-year contract with a $35,000 bonus. And the Toronto Argonauts offered me $50,000 with a 50-50-50. So basically $200,000 for 3 years, all in U.S. funds, I might add, because it's 75% differential now. But I didn't have an agent. I made a mistake, Charlie. I really do. I think if you're going to do something, let professionals enlighten you, especially when you're a young player. You need the right people around you so that you can at least make the right decision, or what you believe is the right decision, with the information that you need. These kids are really smart today. They understand what they want to do. In most cases, they have a really good concept of what they want to do and their self-worth. For me, I was just thrilled to be drafted. I was a 4th-round pick. I was the 3rd pick of the Dolphins because they had to give up number 1 because Shula left left the Colts to go to Miami. So they gave up that 1, and I was a 4th-round pick. And I remember, I sat with Joe Robbie. My first contract, I sat with an owner. My last contract, I sat with an owner. I can tell you that my sitting with Mr. Cook went a whole lot better than my sitting with Mr. Robbie went.
Heard Robbie was difficult at times.
It was easy for me because we sat down. I'll never forget. I went down to Miami. I sat down. He looked at me and he said, "What do you want?" I said, I want 35, 45, $55,000. He says, well, we usually reserve that. You love this too, for higher round picks than you were taking. And I went, holy crap. But he said, you know what? You got it. And I was thrilled. And then all of a sudden the Argonauts, Leo Cahill was the coach, and he kept calling and calling and calling, said, fly up to Canada. Flew up to Toronto, went to a guy who was an attorney up there, Herb Solway, went to his house, sat down. John Bassett Sr. owned the team at that time. Of course, Carlin Bassett was a professional tennis player. John Bassett Jr. owned the Tampa Bay Bandits at that time in the USFL. And so, he made me an offer. He says, but if you leave the country, it's off the table. I signed, and I never looked back. I'm not a rear view mirror guy, Charlie. I like to look through the windshield and see what's out in front of me. Hey, whatever decision you made. You can't change it. Right. You just have to do the best with what you did. And I fortunately wound up in Washington. George traded a number 1 pick for me in '74 to join the football team. So I wound up becoming a number 1 pick in a different kind of way.
When we talk about financial decisions, these guys coming in the league now, you talk about your contract, the league minimum now, guys, for the last guy on the bench, they're making $1 million,
I know.
close to.
I know.
So what is a piece of advice that you give guys in regards to their finances and how they can manage their money? What's the first thing you would tell them?
The first thing I say to young men when it comes to contracts, remember who works for who. The agents work for you. It's your money. And I think you have to be prudent with it, because this game doesn't last very long. I mean, the NFL stands for not for long. You got to remember that. And so you have to, if you have a chance to make that kind of money, put it someplace where you can use it going forward in your life. It's there for you. You won't all of a sudden become destitute. I mean, well, I think I read an article 7, 8 years ago, might have been in Newsweek or one of the magazines, that said that 78% of the players that leave the National Football League are either financially destitute or bankrupt. Now, I don't know. I didn't do a facts check on it, but somebody made that statement. And I know we have guys that have lost a lot of money, guys that have made a lot of money, big name guys have lost a lot of money. Yeah. First of all, it's your money. And then secondly, be careful of the people that you surround yourself with. One of the big problems now, it seems like it's okay, but a lot of guys have family members taking care of things, but they're not professionals. I made a mistake. I can tell you, I made the mistake of not seeking the advice of a professional when it came to my contract. And you know why, Charlie? It becomes emotional. And when you're emotional, you don't make good decisions. But if you have a buffer, let's say the owner or general manager makes an offer and you go, oh, that's crazy. Now all of a sudden your emotions get involved. Now you get mad.
Right.
Instead of having an agent say, just listen, it's their first offer. Let's see how things go a little bit here. Just relax. Let me do my job. So pick the right people around you. But first of all, understand it's your money, and then choose the right people to represent you. What's their reputation? That's where you can do a lot of research. Mm. What have they gotten for other people? Who do they represent? And then you call them up. You call the players that they represent them. Say, what do you think about this guy? What has he done for you? What kind of guidance has he given you? I think that's the way I would go with young guys today. Take the time. Hey, it's your life. Invest something in it to find out if it's going to be the right thing for you.
And guys, that is great advice, because you start handling things yourself, that goes sideways. And now your personal relationship is also being fractured, or could be, in those moments. And with that,
well, even in your business, Charlie, I mean, just it doesn't matter what business you're in. Exactly. Ours is a very visible one, but any business, it should be that way. Absolutely.
So now we're playing a fun little game, right? Where we're talking, what was your best investment versus your worst investment? So let's start down, right? Because he crawled up to glory. So let's start down. In all your playing days, what was either the worst purchase or worst thing you bought, maybe with early money, that you said, man, I wish I could get that money back?
We know, what is this, a 3-hour show? There have been a lot of less than prudent decisions made. I invested in oil and gas back when it was supposedly a tax write-off. I've invested in other companies that have, I could paper my walls with the stock certificates that I have that are worthless. So I've made some mistakes, but not recently. This was in a younger time for me. I guess you could say when I was a bit more foolish and thought that the money train was never going to run out. The most fun one I ever bought was Johnny Greenwood made a Corvette. Mark Mosley and I bought Corvettes. I think they made like 15 of them. Guy just sent me a picture of it. I think it's down in North Carolina somewhere. But that was one of the most fun things that I ever bought was, and then of course, buying when I bought my first home up in Canada, up in Toronto, that was pretty exciting to be able to afford a house to be able to live in. I mean, when I first went there, the apartment we had, you're familiar with those little Formica tables that they have for babies?
Yeah.
That was my kitchen table. Okay. So it's, from the Formica kitchen table that you sit dolls on to a fairly large dining room table now. It's funny. You go through time. I really, really am careful now. I'm into what I consider capital preservation today. I don't do a lot of investing. I don't do a lot of investing in different things. There are certain things that I love. I love the equities markets. I study them. I trade quite a bit. I have great counsel in that area. One of my favorite sayings when it comes to leadership, and I think it applies to all of us as individuals, know what you don't know. And focus in areas where you either like things or know things. Because we can fill our plate up with all kinds of stuff, but you have to know what you don't know. And that, Joe Gibbs was that way. Joe didn't know defense as well as he knew offense. I use the term genius sparingly, but in Joe's case, Bill Walsh's case, and Don Coryell, I think these guys were geniuses when it came to football. And we see it today. Andy Reid, I think, fits in that category. Sean Payton is that way. Sean McVay. These are very creative people. Call them creative, call them choose whatever you want. Right. But Joe didn't know defense, so he hired Richie Pettibone, who really understood it. So Joe knew he didn't know the defensive side, so he hired somebody who really did. And you just have to understand that. And it goes to businesses as well. And please, if you're a young guy out there, I don't care what, just don't give yourself to somebody without something in writing. Mm-hmm. The old, hey, we've been friends for years. You can trust me. Oh, how many years have we known each other? My word is good. Well, if your word is that good, put it in paper. That Absolutely. Makes it even a little bit better.
That makes me like you even more.
Now we're really friends.
And guys, this is priceless advice because Joe, you've been able to, not only do you have a legendary career, but you really have done really well in business, and the things that you've gotten into have been incredible. And the way that you hold yourself and your brand around the country, you are a very sought after name for speaking engagements, for different things with businesses. Did you always see that road, or was business something that always excited you?
Yeah, business always did. Math was always something I enjoyed. And business has always been an exciting thing. I minored in business in school. And, as a matter of fact, I wrote a book called How to Be a Champion Every Day. It's available now on Amazon. In it, I talk about my first real venture into business. When I got into professional football in '74, there weren't any posters of me around. So I made my own. I made my own posters, and I drove to the 7-Elevens. I drove to the department stores. I drove to the pharmacies. I drove to these places, and I was selling my own posters to them. And then there wasn't a football of mine out. So I ordered some footballs, and I thought they would do. I invested probably $4,000, managed to get back maybe $400. The ROI is not really good on that one, but it was a lesson. I enjoy doing creative things now. And the book was a passion of love for me. It's just like it's called How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. It's a business book with stories about life and football and some of the things that I went through as a part of Notre Dame and my name being changed, which really created the brand that exists today. Yeah. That was the brainchild of Roger Baldessari, our sports information director.
Really? Would he come to you and pitch it to you?
Yeah. Evidently, I had a really good junior year. Beginning of my senior year, Roger calls me in the office. He says, how do you pronounce your last name? I said, it's Theismann. He said, no, actually, it's pronounced Theismann. I said, no, it's not. It's Theismann. He said, no, Joe, your last name is Theismann. I said, give me the phone. Picked up the phone, called my dad back home in Jersey. Like, hey, Dad, I got a question for you. Hey, fire away, Joe. How do you pronounce our last name? Like, there's dead silence on the phone. My dad comes in, he says, are you all right? He said, you don't know how to pronounce your last name. What have you been doing for the last 3 years? I said, I'll explain it later. Turned to Roger. I says, Roger, look, my last name is Theismann. I just got to phone my dad. He said, Joe, I want to tell you something. There's a trophy out there called the Theismann Trophy. He goes, the best college football player in the country. We think you have a chance to win that trophy, but we're not just going to count on your athletic ability, nor the reputation of the University of Notre Dame, but we think by just simply changing the pronunciation of your last name from Theismann to Theismann to rhyme with Heisman, we can get you that trophy. And I finished second to Jim Plunkett, but it's really how I became Joe Theismann. And then I called my grandmother. I had to call my grandmother. She was the matriarch of the family. I said, hey, Granny, I got a question for you. And she's German. She said, what do you want? I said, they want to change the pronunciation of our last name from Theismann to Theismann. She says, well, I tell you what. She says, actually, the correct pronunciation is Theismann, and that's closer than what we have now. So I'm okay with it.
Grandma T for the win.
That's it. Got the blessing. So, and that's really went forward. I mean, that's how my life went forward.
Wow, that's incredible. And
but the thing that the game has allowed me to do, and you ask about has football was always, I call it the axle of my wheel. But I always had interests in other areas. I used to own the the Redskin newspaper. I owned that for a while. So I did that. I did radio. I did television. I had, I still have one restaurant left. I had 6 at one time while I was playing. I was a disc jockey for 2 years. I did morning drive. Radio to me is the most creative element out there. I just absolutely love it. And I know you guys do too. I mean, you can have so much fun and paint pictures for people. And then you get involved in companies like, I did a thing for Super Beta for a number of years to help with prostate care. And then I'm involved with a company now called MedLiminal. The website is medliminal.com. And what we do is for employers, we get a chance to look at their medical bills. So if you're an employee working somewhere, we'll look at your medical bills and we try and help companies be fiscally responsible because every medical bill has overcharges in it.
Oh, forget it. You need to look through that thing with a few reps.
And what are you looking at? So what we do is we provide the opportunity for people to be able to look at it and then give them feedback and say, is this charge correct or is this charge incorrect? And so we evaluate them. And I'm excited. The thing that I love to do now, Charlie, is I love to try and help people. I've been blessed in my life many, many times over. So how can you mentor people? How can you help people? I'm 100% convinced that we're put on this earth to serve, not to be served. And giving back is a way to do it. That's why, if you go on my website, you'll see the things that I sign. All the donations go to St. Jude Children's Research Center down in Memphis. And I just, how can, especially now in this pandemic, how can we help somebody? Yeah. What can you do to help a neighbor? What can you do to help a friend? It's given us a chance, I think, a real opportunity to reflect on our own lives and our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, speaking of those, the reporter pieces that formerly the Washington Redskins had put out, those were some of the most creative covers in the universe. We actually have a couple of them here in the studio. Those covers were extremely creative, Joe.
Yeah, it was, it was fun. I can't tell you how I got involved. All of a sudden, somebody said, hey, congratulations. I said, what? He says, you own a newspaper. Okay.
Go to town.
Why not? What else,
That's awesome. Well, let's wrap it here with Super Bowl champ, league MVP, Joe Theismann. Joe, what is the ultimate meal you can serve at Super Bowl?
Oh, at Super Bowl, you got to have dogs. Brats and dogs. I mean, bring the tailgate into the house or back the car up to the door and open it, or back the truck up to the door and open it. Or if you have a garage, open it up, go out there, get the TV out there. I think, a little bit of flair for outside, but to me, it's got to be brats and it's got to be dogs and burgers.
Can't go wrong.
That's it. I don't think you can go wrong with that. And then, you can always get the 7-layer cheese dip or whatever that is, the Mexican cheese.
You'll be wearing that on Monday. The 7-layer dip you wear on Monday, folks.
That's exactly right. So, but I would go with the traditional.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first. Joe, we love you. We thank you so much, man, for taking the time to visit us.
Thanks, Charlie. Great catching up with you. Take care and stay safe.